Hello everyone, I'm Dante from Low Mana and welcome to my breakdown of the new cinematic trailer for D.Va Shooting Stars. I've already gone over the story in last week's video, but today we're going into all the little details and digging deep into the lore, both minor and in the greater story. Possibly the most relevant and requested part of D.Va's lore is what and who exactly are MEKA. We finally get to see all the other members, who all have their own hidden details and backstories to uncover. So before we run through the more obvious members in the form of the pilots, let's start with who runs the Mecha operation. Although not seen here, it has been confirmed that they are led by someone called Ma Young, not an active pilot themselves, but the person responsible for the operation, acting as the barrier between the military and the pilots who are in a grey area of being special civilians. Along with each pilot are specially assigned mechanics who main the Mecha unit. The only one we can actually see is D.Va's oldest and closest friend, Dae-hyun. Although, for some reason, he doesn't seem to be doing any actual work, unless picking up wrenches off the floor counts. This immediately strikes me as a slightly odd setup for a military organisation. You can rationalise that bringing in pro players due to their adaptive skills, crossing over with the mech suits, but it seems a little odd to make them completely autonomous. These mechs are originally based on drone designs that eventually failed, so there are far better qualified mechanics to do this job. Before I start ranting too much, let's go back to Dae-hyun. We discover that him and Hannah have a long history together, predating her success as an esports star. They clearly have some stories together as she reminisces of simpler times, when just like now, Hannah would have put herself in danger to prove that she's the best, wrecking his hover scooter some years before. Something I find interesting about their relationship is that clearly he isn't part of the stardom, but is by Hannah's side the whole time, to ground her and bring her back to her roots. Yet he doesn't get to see the other side of it, the parties, the food, the VIP treatment in general. He does seem, however, to want to experience what it is like, although Hannah either doesn't recognise this or doesn't think it's worth showing him. Instead, he works tirelessly by her side to help keep her at the top of her game. But these two aren't alone, even if technically they were here. Usually alongside her are the other Mecha pilots. Unfortunately, we don't get to see any of them here, but after this, it's only a matter of time. There is a lot of hidden information about them though, so let's try and work our way through it. I've run through all the names before, so this time I'm going to go through each and everything we know about them. So, starting from the left, we have Dae-hyun, better known as Casino. He is actually a little different to the others, as he has little connection to esports, but instead, the sport he is related to is racing. As an ex-racing pro, he proves it's not just gamers who have the reactions for Mecha. This even carries over into the design of his mech, with all the pilots leaving their mark on what used to be generic military drones, with a nice green and black look over a sleek winged body, clearly designed for speed and named La Princess Serene. Next up we've got Yuna or Demon, who out of all the pilots has the closest connection to D.Va, as they were once teammates for the same clan and presumably some of the same games. Although what games these consist of is rather ambiguous, especially after D.Va's retcon, but this is why they share the same naming convention, which makes me wonder why is the D from their clan, and if so, does that make them originally Mon and Va? Rather odd names, or the Blizzard team just wanted a more visual way of connecting them. Yuna's mech Beast is a large red mech with a more traditional look, at least if you're used to Mech Warrior. From what we can tell of the snapshot of it in action, we can see it has a shield on the right arm and a large fist on the left side, which I assume has a gun attached to it. The third pilot, Hyung-so, or King, is the next closest to D.Va, but for the opposite reasons. King was one of D.Va's biggest rivals throughout her career, and now one of her greatest allies. His mech, Sing-jeon, to me is actually one of the most interesting, as it so clearly ties into the name. As you can see, his mech is equipped with a lot of rockets to barrage his enemies, which is actually what a Sing-jeon used to be. An ancient Korean artillery piece that fired racks of primitive rockets at its enemies, dating all the way back to the 14th century. On the opposite end of the tech spectrum, we have Seung-hwa, whose name Overlord is not only a throwback to StarCraft, but his mech Mastermind. We don't know too much about him personally, but his mech is probably the most advanced. Rather than firing rockets, having Gatling guns or a large shield, Mastermind is equipped with a small fleet of drones, each of their own laser-based weapons, able to swarm his enemies while attacking himself. That kind of micro means he has to be a StarCraft pro. Aside from these new Mecha members, we also get confirmation of D.Va's mech Toki, which, as you can guess, means rabbit. Straight after being introduced to D.Va's team members, we get 2 very short clips of Busan's constant enemies with the Guixin, which translates to ghost. Also nicely translated for us on the TV clip of the last fight. Although not fully detailed here, Guixin are some of the few remaining Omnics that continue to attack. They have been attacking Busan and South Korea for decades at this point, usually taking the form of a single large construct, armed with multiple weapons and trudging through the seas to attack Busan. Originally they were able to defend themselves with drones, but as Omnics do, they adapted, breaking through the drones after time. To prevent this, Mecha division was created, with human pilots and custom mechs. Luckily it takes time for these large mechs to be constructed, leaving several months between attacks. Plenty of time for Busan to restore and prepare their defences each time. This brings us to the most recent attack. The Omnics are starting to adapt to even the Mecha squad. Although they did eventually hold it back, it wasn't without casualties, crashing into the heart of Busan before finally bringing it down, wrecking 4 of the mechs in the process, one of which was completely totaled. We can see in the brief clip as Demon helps Overlord out of his trashed mech, while Demon's being craned off, even missing an arm. One interesting point about this image is the guards marking off the area and handling the recovery of what's left. At a glance they appear to be military or some version of a police force. However, their uniform is actually very familiar. It's quite possible, as with much of Overwatch's contracts, since the fall, these are private contractors, specifically Helix, who Farah belongs to. In the days following this encounter, all the pilots took part in a press conference to show they had survived, although many looked pretty rough, especially Mastermind. This, more importantly, gives us an insight into the odd perspective placed on Mecha by the media, spinning the story as if all the pilots are just taking a general break, when in fact they are likely seriously injured and the mechs are ruined, leaving Busan almost entirely defenseless to follow up attacks, which is something they'll have to deal with sooner rather than later. The Omnics have adapted again, stepping up their attacks with smaller, more mobile and easier to produce Omnics. Fortunately, the diligent D.Va had already finished preparing her mech, and just in time. She battles them alone, proving why she is the face of the team, sacrificing Toki and nearly herself to protect the city, leading to the iconic self-destruct that lights up the night sky, although probably not a common tactic the city will want to see her take on. She's now back in the base, patched up from her near-death experience alongside her best friend and personal mechanic. Maybe now he'll get some work done. Now is the time for the other Mecha pilots to step up. D.Va may be the star, but she can't do this alone. This past week has shown this more than any speech ever will. If a new Overwatch is to rise, Mecha surely will be a powerful resource. Not just for Busan, but the war to come. I'd argue that the most impactful part of the cinematic is the more personal side to D.Va we get to see. So far, she has just been the face of Mecha, an incredibly famous esports star and someone who shines in the spotlight. This even carries over into her in-game voice lines and general personality, shooting stars as a very large counterpoint to this area. That this is just a public face, a facade needed to maintain public order and to keep the press busy, without diving into more serious issues. This split lifestyle clearly is taking its toll on D.Va, as the pressure from the Omnic invasion steps up. So does the social pressure to keep a positive face on Mecha. Behind the scenes, she shuns the public lifestyle. The glitz and glamour is something she avoids, only taking part when she needs for the public image. Dae-hyun, her closest friend, acts as one of the most important people in her life, even if he doesn't realize it. He constantly talks about what it would be like to go try some of the fancier lifestyles D.Va has access to, but she constantly pushes back on this idea. Not just because she doesn't like it, because they have a more important job to do. Through him, she can share the load of stress, trauma, and pain that she has to go through to be the best and protect the city. D.Va rapidly went from being a celebrity playing games, which itself is pressuring, to having her decisions decide which people live or die. Now she has to watch her friends put themselves in danger along with her. The last time was close. Too close to sit back and take a break. If she doesn't take this burden upon herself, she is afraid no one will. That to everyone else, this is just another game. I hope for her sake, she is able to share this with Dae-hyun before it builds too much. They may not realize it yet, but a war is coming, and they'll need to work together to survive. The last piece I want to touch on today is a bit more lighthearted. As with every new cinematic, comic and even voice line, new theories arise. And today I have one that may actually tie this seemingly disconnected story arc back into the main threads. Specifically that of Talon, and the impending war. No date exactly has been given for when this sits within the world of Overwatch, but from what we see, I'd say it can't be too far behind the present day. Doomfist has likely escaped by this point, and I think the Omnics, or Guishin, are the key to this. You may have noticed that the colour of the Omnics they are fighting are somewhat familiar. Not your standard industrial and practical look that we saw in the Omnic Crisis, but instead a little more sleek, coated in black with flares of red, just like another organisation we know, Talon. We know they're trying to create chaos, playing both sides and forcing confrontation on multiple fronts, from the assassination of Omnic leaders, supplying the Russians with Omnic technology, shutting down Overwatch, and other threads we are yet to discover. What if they are also escalating the side of the Omnics more directly? For some reason, the Omnian that has been attacking Korea has never been dealt with, and constantly attacks Busan, not all the other countries easily within reach. They have been sending just one Omnic each time, learning from its defeat and starting work on the next prototype, releasing it once created in an almost predictable style. Seems somewhat odd for the most advanced production of military AIs. Why not just change targets, make something completely different? Where did they even get the vast resources to make such a giant machine? What if the Omnium isn't actually lost, but Talon somehow has access to them? With their resources and strange access to Omnic technologies, it's not much of a stretch to imagine they could do it. And if they did, then what if they are just using Korea to test their technologies? Now that Doomfist is back and the testing is done, it's time to take action. This is where the completely new variety of Omnics comes into play, attacking when Busan is at its weakest. After a narrow win, now even more narrow. Busan has no one left to protect them, and with no Overwatch, can anyone even help them now? If you're going to start a global war, this is certainly one way to do it. We're just lucky that D.Va has been able to delay it, at least for now. Thanks for watching this lore breakdown. If you enjoyed this episode and found it useful, leave a like. You can subscribe to support the channel and use the bell to be notified of new content as it goes live. Until next time, I've been Dante, thanks for watching.